This is Modern Mindset, the show that picks the brains of the world's leading minds to help you unlock yours. I'm your host, Adam Cox, and joining me today, we have a life coach based in Leeds, Jennie Mcsorley. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
More than welcome. So I think there's too many coaches based in London, too many psychologists based in London. It's good to hear a regional accent on the show. Tell us a bit about what attracted you to the world of coaching, psychology, and change work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, if we go way back and look at my story, it's really from having a lifestyle as a party girl, some would say. And I had bad habits in a way where I used to go out, a lot of, toxic environments. And that also led to a lot of toxic relationships. And it came to a point where I realized this was just filling a void. And it was a case that I had to face my demons and I couldn't fill the void anymore. And that was really the beginning of a self-development journey. And it started with a book, actually. It was a book just about mindfulness and really just, there was a little CD with it about meditation and being aware of our thoughts. And I sort of became obsessed from there about the mind and how it works and how powerful it is as well, and how our mind affects our behaviors. And it made me reflect. It made me reflect on the lifestyle that I had, the relationships that I had, and the way that I viewed myself as well, the opinion that I had on myself.
So just
And
jumping in there, because a lot of people listening, when they hear that kind of phrase, kind of someone living the high life, like partying all the time, for a lot of people, when they look at social media, that's the desirable life. That's the life that they aspire to have. Half of celebrities' Instagram accounts are filled with this kind of party lifestyle. What was it about that made you think this wasn't all it was cracked up to be?
I think it's surface level. It looks good from the outside, but it doesn't feel good on the inside. So I found that I was using it as a way, as I said, of filling the void. I was trying to use that as a way of feeling whole and complete. And for me, it wasn't me making me feel like that. I knew that there was something more, something, and I really had to do the inner work, and that's development world. So it's really interesting that you've said that, because it can look amazing on social media. As much as your life can look picture perfect, you don't know what's going on the inside for someone as well. And that's the important part, is to have a fulfillment in your life as well.
And I think that element of fulfillment is such an important thing that people know when it's there. They know when they feel fulfilled. They know when they've got a sense of purpose and mission, and they know when it isn't there. And the temptation, I think, for humans in general is if something feels like it's missing, then there's almost this urge to self-medicate with whatever works. And that might be drink, drugs, partying, social media, watching too much TV, whatever it might be. What were you using? Was it the social interaction that was kind of the bit that kind of missed the void for you? Or what was the bit that actually kind of made you temporarily think, right, this sticky plaster is actually working for a while?
I think it was a mixture of everything. Like you said there is actually a community to it as well, which as human beings, we seek a community, and there was the same people that I saw every weekend in these clubs. So there was a sense that felt good to be part of a community, to be part of this environment every weekend. Really, it wasn't a conscious thing. It just happened. It was just, I didn't realize that I was, trying to mask something. I didn't realize that there was stuff going on inside that I needed to deal with. Really, it just went out every weekend, and it in a way numbed what really was going on inside. So a mixture of things there, really.
Yeah. And you're right about the phrase unconscious, because I think a lot of people, when they are numbing pain, whether that's overeating, drinking too much, whatever it might be, I don't think it's a conscious effort to numb pain. It's just kind of like they'll snack a bit and that feels good. So they snack a bit more. And then suddenly you get in these kind of addictive cycles. Were you aware of it at the time, or is it only now when you look back that you realize that that's what you were doing, that you were kind of filling a void, you were numbing pain?
I think there's a part of me that knew that there was pain there, but there was also the part of me that didn't want to face it. So when I was doing these things, as I said, it wasn't on a conscious level, but I knew that it made me feel better at that moment. So I didn't go out with a full attention and awareness that, I'm going to go out and it's going to make me feel good for the weekend and I'm going to numb all this pain. It was more of a case that I'm going to go out, I'm going to enjoy myself and deal with that shit later.
That makes sense. So what was the catalyst, the epiphany for you, the kind of the bit where the straw breaks the camel's back and you think enough's enough. I've tried this path out. It's not working for me. Was there something specific that happened to you that made you reflect on everything? Or was it just, you naturally kind of veered in a different direction?
There wasn't a pinnacle moment. And I think it was a combination of getting older and also, yeah, I think age was a factor because I think from a young age, probably even before being a teenager, I was living this lifestyle, and it got to my mid-20s and I'd been living this life for 10 years, and sort of reflecting and looking at other people, and seeing where they are in their lives, and really asking myself, who do I want to be? Is this the life that I want to live? Is this the future that I want for myself? And the main sort of transformation in a way was when I started changing these habits for more healthy habits. So it could have been, rather than going on a night out, I would book yoga for the Saturday morning. So that meant that I wouldn't go out drinking on the Friday night. And then I would replace these late nights for early mornings, getting out in nature, started doing the yoga, started reading a lot more, started really just doing that inner work. Having said that, that was the beginning of my self-development journey. And I thought I'd healed in a way, but as we all know, the path of healing is not linear. There's not really a goal, it's a constant thing. I actually had a bit of a breakdown because I work in a corporate environment, and I was very overwhelmed with life. And it came to a point where I had burnout. And you can have this spiritual path, but it doesn't avoid these things happening. And that's when I actually had to seek professional help, go to a therapist. And that's when the further sort of inner work started to happen as well. And I think when I look at self-development, it's really just peeling back the layers, and then there'll be uncovering something there. And then when we heal past that, there may be something else that crops up. And that's really how I see the whole journey. And I know that I'll continue with this journey as well.
Mm. And you use this phrase inner work a lot, and I know what you mean. But from someone listening, what does that in layman's terms mean, to you in terms of doing the inner work?
Inner work, well, to me, it could be such as seeking a therapist, talking about past traumas, talking about things in your childhood that may be painful. It's also, for me personally, a spiritual way of healing, where it could be meditation. It could also be other therapies, such as speaking to a coach, or trying Reiki therapies, holistic therapies. It's really just seeing what works for you. So I think when I say inner work, it's just a way of healing and finding what that is for you, because that can be different for every person. Some people might benefit from therapy, some people might not necessarily like it, some people might like the holistic approach more. So it's really whatever works for them. And the way that I'd say inner work is facing the dark stuff that you don't really want to look at, and healing from that. That's what I'd say inner
Yeah.
work for me.
And I agree with that. And I think it's such an important thing to do, because sometimes I think the temptation is to seek things external. So for you, there was part time, it was going out partying. That was an external way to kind of deal with it. And for a lot of people, they feel stressed, they feel anxious, they feel depressed, they go to a doctor, they get medication, and that's kind of an external way of dealing with the problem. But it
Mhm.
seems like quite intuitively you went inwards and said, right, what can I change about my emotions, my thoughts, my beliefs, and the inner stuff? And what you've learned, and what I know, and what a lot of the listeners know, when you fix the inside stuff, the outside changes. If there's a, what's the metaphor? I think, if the tree has got rotten fruit, you don't try and deal with the fruit, you deal with the tree itself, and then everything changes. We talked just before we went live about the element of time, and we're going to get into the key catalyst, as to what you do to help women now. But if you had a time machine and you can go back to, let's say, you in those kind of first few years where you kind of started building an identity around, going out partying, and that's the kind of a key part of your identity, your purpose. What advice would you have given to the younger version of you, and would she have actually listened?
Great question. I think what I'd want to do physically, if I could, is just give her a hug and say, "You are loved, you are enough, you are worthy." I don't really believe in regrets or anything, or changing my path, because it's led me to who I am today and led me to obviously want to help others. The advice I would probably give is exactly that you are, loved, and you are enough, and you don't need to seek validation from other people, and you don't need to be in these environments to be happy. There are other ways. So I think that's the advice I'd give myself. Yeah.
Would she have listened?
Um, Probably not.
That
Honestly, probably not.
is. So now a lot of your, let's say, intention around coaching is to help people that have had toxic relationships. um, the phrase toxic relationships we didn't really hear of too much, let's say 10-15 years ago. There was a lot about domestic abuse and
Mhm.
sometimes emotional abuse, but this phrase toxic
Mhm.
relationships, now we see it on social media all the time: get rid of the toxic people from your life. But what does the phrase toxic relationship mean to you, and what was your experience
Mhm.
of that, and how did it impact you?
Yeah, it's again really good question. For me, from a young age, it was more about mental abuse and control. Um, Not necessarily physical. It was more about the way that I was spoken to. Um, there was a lot of, when I say toxic, there was a lot of drug abuse as well with ex-boyfriends, which is a really unhealthy environment to be in, and that led to really bad behaviors as well. So when I say toxic, it could be a multitude of things. It can be being in an unhealthy environment, something that's not fulfilling you, for someone to put you down, and to control you, and to use sort of mentally negative words against you as well. So that's the way that I would view something toxic. It's not fulfilling you. And a lot of times it's hard to get out of that as well. It feels comfortable. And this is something that I've learned myself with my personal experiences. We get used to being treated a certain way. And that's why we find ourselves in that position again and again. especially with relationships, is because we get used to being treated badly, and in a way it becomes our comfort zone. It becomes what we know, and in a strange way as well, it's how we believe love is supposed to be. So yeah, that's how I would see the term toxic. To me, that's the way I would view it from my personal experience.
That makes sense. And you said before, if you could go back in time, you would let that younger version of you know that, you are enough, you are worthy, you don't need that validation. Do you think at some level, the bits that were missing in you led you to find relationships where you were treated in a way where perhaps that's how you thought you should be treated because that's how you saw yourself at that point in time?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is, you've hit the nail on the head there. That is why I was in these relationships, because I didn't view myself to be worthy of someone treating me well. And the worst the worst thing about that is you jump from one relationship to another, but your self-worth is never building up because you used to having that relationship with someone who's beating you down, and you never really seem to get out of the cycle because you're not having that self-worth.
Mm.
So it's a really difficult thing for women to, well, men as well, to get out of. It's a really difficult thing to get out of. And it takes you a lot of hard work to step back and realize, hang on, I'm worth more than this.
Because there is a really interesting dynamic. I experienced it myself. I've worked with lots of clients that had this kind of low feelings of self-worth, believing that they're not good enough. And the interesting thing is that if someone told them that they were ugly, crap, useless, they would believe the negative words. But if someone actually gave them encouragement, they would think that people are trying to make fun of them or be patronizing. It would be instantly rejected. What were some of the other clues that you saw, either in yourself or other people, that might be clues of a low level of self-worth?
Just not believing in yourself, not wanting to do anything for yourself. I think on many different levels. So on a personal level, you're not wanting to get, for example, physically fit, to not want to progress with your career, to not want to show up, to not want to build relationships with people outside of obviously your romantic relationship. I think it can affect all different areas of your life. It affects the way that you interact with other people. Um, yeah, I think that's the main thing.
So the clues are really, it's like how you think about yourself and what you're willing to do for yourself. And I think
Yeah.
that's a clue that I've seen for people with low self-esteem or low self-worth, is that they'll quite often do more for other people than they'll do for themselves because they don't feel valuable enough in and of themselves.
Mm.
One of the vehicles that you utilize to help people change and either kind of build up their self-worth is NLP. To someone listening not familiar with NLP, what is NLP?
Neuro linguistic programming, and it's a really hard thing to describe. I try and describe it to my friends, and they look at me like I'm an alien. Um, my way of viewing NLP is using tools and techniques that can tune into the subconscious mind and can also rewire our brains to think a different way. So, what that might look like is having a belief that we built from childhood and being able to revisit that belief and being able to reframe it into being an empowering belief. And it's a very powerful tool in unpeeling all these layers, all these beliefs, all these, conditioning that we've had since childhood, and it's unraveling all that stuff that we thought to be true. And in a way, it's manipulating the mind, but not in a negative way. I don't really like that word manipulate, but that's what I would say. It's manipulating the mind in a positive way in order for us to reframe how we view the world and reframe how we view ourselves as well.
Hmm. No, I think it's a really good explanation. My take on NLP is kind of like people have unconscious strategies, whether that's kind of like reading, writing, believing things, evaluating themselves. And some people do that in a way that's useful, and some people do it in a way that isn't that useful. And you can model either of those things. So some people worry and they get stressed, and if you do similar things, you experience different results. How do you use some of the principles of NLP to create changes, particularly in women that might have experienced a toxic relationship?
Mm-hmm. So one of the really powerful techniques that I use is the timeline therapy. And what that is we view our timeline, we tune into our minds and we see our timeline. And we would focus on one belief, one limiting belief. So a belief that we've built from childhood, for example, and it could be something like, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough. And what we discover is where that belief originated from. And that can go way back to you being very, very young, and seeing all them memories and all them times in our life where we've built this belief. And the powerful way of looking at it is disassociating with that memory and really tuning into what could we take from that could be an empowering belief. How can we reframe that and take that away so it's actually an empowering belief? So in a way, it's healing from that memory, but not only healing, it's also giving it a positive perspective as well, taking away an empowering thought rather than limiting. And once we can start doing that, it does take time, but once we can start doing that, it completely changes the outlook that we have on the world and ourselves.
Mm. And when you think back to some of those toxic relationships that you were in, is there a different meaning that you give to it now than when you were experiencing the relationship, like in the moment?
The way that I view it now is I feel everything that has happened, I don't want to sound cliche, it has happened to me for a reason. And I look at it, I don't see it in a negative way. I don't see it as being painful. I've managed to process the memory to take the a positive from it, and to reflect as well in the person that I am now and the person I was then. And if anything, that's empowering to know that I've managed to get through them difficult times. I've managed to pull my strength from somewhere and to overcome some very sort of unhealthy, toxic, and very messy situations as well. So the way that I view it now is in a positive way.
Mm. And I guess it helps you to help other people. The fact that you've perhaps gone through the kind of situation that they might be facing, and they're not through the other side yet. So the fact that you've gone through the storm means that you're in a way evidence that it's possible to kind of come out the other side. And I find that with me as well. I used to have very severe anxiety and phobias. So when I speak to someone, they've got crippling anxiety or they've got severe phobias, the fact that I can say, well, I know exactly what you feel. And when I describe mine, they're like, oh, wow, that sounds horrific. And then you kind of come out the other side. In a weird way, your challenge is someone else's evidence that change is possible. What do you think is the biggest misconception about NLP? What do people think it is and that it isn't?
I think to me, and having a client tomorrow, I have to tell them to be open minded
Mm.
because it can sound woo woo. So a lot of the people that I associate myself with are spiritual people. So people that I've done my training with, they're all into that kind of stuff. And for any person off the street, explaining NLP can sound woo woo, but it's really just having an open mind with it. and just to experience it and
Mm,
then make an opinion on it after you've experienced it. That's what I would say with NLP.
no, fair enough. And if you're, I mean, we talked about time looking backwards. If you're looking into the future,
Mhm.
how do you see, what do you anticipate your impact to be in the realm of coaching? Because, it seems to me like you've got a clear vision, a clear mission in terms of what you're doing. What does that future look like for you?
For me, it's been able to help these women in not only using life coaching and NLP, but be able to have so many different tools and techniques in my toolbox in a way, learning more and reinvesting in myself and my business. So learning, tapping techniques, learning holistic therapies, Reiki, yoga, just really delving into that world of healing and being a one-man band where someone can come to me with a problem and me saying we can resolve that, and I have this technique and this technique, and being able to offer myself to people and being able to offer so much more than just a coaching session.
That makes sense. Yeah. So I mean, in a way, it's being able to take people from particularly women from where they are now to where
Mhm.
you've got to,
Yeah.
through what you know and these tools that you're learning. And what advice would you be? Let's say that someone isn't fortunate enough to be able to work with you now, but they still want to glean from your experience, maybe some practical things that they can do if either they're in a toxic relationship or they've recently left a toxic relationship. What would be your advice or tips?
I would say rediscover who you are, even if you are in that environment. Make sure that you take time out for yourself. And this could be many different ways, but it could be, I would say, recommend journaling. Journal things that you love about yourself, and that's going to be difficult. Affirmations, and again, really, really difficult for people struggling with self worth. Say, for example, looking in the mirror and saying, I love you, you are worthy. Affirmations are a really powerful tool as well. There's a lot of information on the internet, but I would say journaling is the main one. You can do that in your own time, and also looking at affirmations for self love.
Mm. And is there any advice that you would give, not necessarily to someone that's been in, let's say, a toxic relationship, but just to boost their own feelings of self-worth and self-esteem? What do you do if you wake up one day and you're feeling a bit low? What do you do to kind of supercharge yourself and get yourself in the best possible state?
It really depends on the individual person, but for me personally, there's things that I enjoy and make me feel good. So, keeping fit, yoga, exercise, getting out in nature, connecting with people, connecting with like-minded people, discovering your passion, reading. These are all things that work for me. So I would say really tune into you. What did you enjoy doing as a child? Did you like drawing? Having that childlike element where you can go back to who you used to be and rediscovering the love that you had for something when you were younger. These are all great tools for building your self-worth and feeling good about yourself again as well.
Hmm, that's it. If someone's listening right now and they want to connect with you or have you be their coach to get them, to a better place where they feel better about themselves, where's the best place they can go to for more information?
Yeah, so I have a couple of links. So we've got my Instagram, which is Jennie, which is with an IE underscore Mac, which is MC Health and Wellness. That's my Instagram. And then I also have my Facebook, which is Jennie Mac Coaching.
Fantastic. Jen, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Adam. It's been wonderful.
And to you at home, thanks for joining me on Modern Mindset. See you again soon for more.